Imagine a land where the same rivers have flowed for over 5,000 years, where emperors once ruled with the mandate of heaven, and where ideas, inventions, and philosophies shaped the entire world. This is China, a civilization so vast, so enduring, that its story is not just the history of a nation, but a living chronicle of human achievement. From ancient dynasties rising along the banks of the Yellow River to the monumental walls built to guard its people, from golden ages of art and invention to centuries of trials, invasions, and revolutions, China's journey is as dramatic as it is inspiring. Today, we'll travel through time, from the mists of prehistory to the bustling streets of modern Beijing, and uncover how one civilization could survive, adapt, and thrive for millennia. This is the epic story of China. The story of China begins long before written history, in the fertile valleys where two mighty rivers, the Yellow River in the north and the Yangtze in the south, carved out lifelines for early communities. These waterways were more than just sources of food and water. They were the arteries through which culture, trade, and ideas would one day flow. Around 7000 BCE, Neolithic villages emerged, and people began cultivating millet in the north and rice in the south. They domesticated animals, crafted pottery, and formed tight-knit farming communities that laid the groundwork for something much greater. It was here that the first sparks of civilization appeared, with the development of organized society, social roles, and the earliest hints of religious and cultural expression. The Yangshao culture, known for its painted pottery, and the Longshan culture, famous for its black polished pottery and early urban centers, were stepping stones toward state-level societies. These ancient peoples built homes, worked the land, and developed the tools and skills that would later define Chinese craftsmanship. As centuries passed, these cultures evolved into the earliest known dynasties. The Xia dynasty, traditionally dated from around 2070 to 1600 BCE, is considered the first dynasty in Chinese history, though it straddles the line between legend and fact. Ancient records speak of a great ruler, Yu the Great, who tamed the floods of the Yellow River through massive engineering works. While archaeological evidence is still debated, the Xia represents a key chapter in the mytho-historical narrative of China, the idea that leadership and harmony with nature were divine mandates. Following the Xia came the Shang dynasty, from around 1600 to 1046 BCE, the first fully historical dynasty supported by archaeological proof. The Shang ruled from fortified cities and developed a complex social structure, with kings at the top, supported by a class of nobles, warriors, artisans, and farmers. This was an age of incredible innovation. Bronze casting reached new heights, producing weapons, tools, and ritual vessels of remarkable craftsmanship. Most importantly, this period gave birth to one of the world's oldest continuous writing systems. Chinese characters, carved into oracle bones used for divination. These inscriptions not only reveal the religious beliefs of the time, but also provide a priceless record of early Chinese politics, warfare, and culture. By 1046 BCE, the Shang were overthrown by the Zhou dynasty, marking another milestone in the origins of Chinese civilization. The Zhou introduced the concept of the mandate of heaven, the belief that rulers governed with divine approval, but could lose that right if they failed in virtue and justice. This idea became a guiding principle of Chinese political philosophy for over 2 millennia. Under the Zhou, feudal states emerged, ruled by local lords loyal to the king. This allowed for both unity and regional diversity, fostering advancements in agriculture, technology, and philosophy. Iron tools replaced bronze, irrigation systems expanded, and population centers grew. Yet, these early centuries were not without conflict. Power struggles between states and the challenges of governing such vast territories led to periods of instability. Still, the cultural foundations laid during these formative dynasties, a shared writing system, ancestor worship, reverence for nature, and a vision of moral governance, endured through every upheaval. By the end of this early era, China had already become a civilization distinct in its identity and remarkably sophisticated for its time. Its people had mastered agriculture, developed one of the world's earliest continuous written languages, and created a framework of political and spiritual thought that would echo through every dynasty to come. The origins of China are not just the beginnings of a nation. They are the roots of a civilization that, over the next several thousand years, would grow into one of the most influential cultures in human history. After centuries of fragmented rule and constant warfare between rival states, China stood on the edge of a new era. The Warring States period had pushed the land into chaos, but it also sharpened the tools of statecraft, military strategy, and governance. Out of this storm emerged the Qin state, led by a ruler whose ambition knew no bounds, Qin Huang. In 221 BCE, he achieved what no one before him had done. He united all of China under one centralized government. This was the birth of the Qin dynasty, short-lived yet immensely influential. Qin Huang wasted no time in transforming the land he ruled. Determined to erase divisions between the former warring states, he standardized weights and measures, unified currency, and created a single writing system to bridge the vast cultural and linguistic diversity of China. Roads and canals were constructed to bind the empire together, enabling trade, movement, and communication on an unprecedented scale. His vision was not just political, it was monumental. Massive construction projects began, including the first version of what would later become the Great Wall, built to protect the empire's northern borders from nomadic invasions. But Qin Huang's reign was also marked by harshness. His government was rooted in legalism, a philosophy that emphasized strict laws, severe punishments, and absolute obedience to authority. While this brought order and unity, it also bred resentment. Great works were accomplished at the cost of immense human suffering, with countless laborers conscripted for military service or forced labor. The emperor's fear of dissent led to book burnings and the suppression of intellectual debate, ensuring that only ideas aligned with state ideology could survive. The Qin dynasty lasted only 15 years, collapsing soon after the death of Qin Huang in 210 BCE. Yet its impact was profound. It set the administrative and territorial framework that would guide Chinese governance for centuries. From the ashes of the Qin rose the Han dynasty in 206 BCE, which would refine and humanize the imperial system, creating a model of governance admired for generations. The Han emperors preserved the centralized bureaucracy introduced by the Qin, but infused it with Confucian ideals. Instead of ruling solely through fear, they emphasized moral virtue, respect for tradition, and the role of the ruler as a benevolent father to the people. Confucian classics became the foundation of education, and civil service examinations, though still in their infancy, began to select talented officials based on merit rather than birth alone. Under the Han, China expanded outward, conquering new territories and solidifying its borders. The empire extended its influence far into Central Asia, opening up the Silk Road, a vast trade network that connected China to India, Persia, and even the Roman Empire. Along these routes, silk, spices, and ceramics flowed westward, while glassware, precious metals, and new ideas flowed east. It was not only goods that traveled these roads, but also religions, philosophies, and cultural practices, enriching China's identity. This era also witnessed remarkable advancements in science, technology, and culture. Paper was invented, revolutionizing record-keeping and literature. Seismographs were designed to detect earthquakes, while advances in medicine, astronomy, and engineering improved everyday life. Han art and literature flourished, with historical records meticulously compiled to preserve the memory of the past. Yet the Han dynasty, like all great empires, faced challenges. Court intrigues, corruption, and the growing power of landowners weakened central authority. Natural disasters and heavy taxation sparked rebellions, most notably the Yellow Turban Rebellion, which further strained the empire. By 220 CE, the Han dynasty had fallen, giving way to another period of division and war. Even so, the Qin and Han legacies endured. The Qin had created the blueprint for a united empire, while the Han had softened and enriched it, weaving in cultural and philosophical depth. Together, they established the idea of China as a single, centralized state, a concept so powerful that it would survive every dynasty, every invasion, and every revolution to come. These two dynasties did not merely govern, they defined what it meant to be China. After the fall of the Han dynasty, China endured centuries of division, with rival kingdoms and warlords vying for control. Yet from this instability emerged some of the most remarkable chapters in its history. When unity was finally restored under the Sui dynasty in 581 CE, it set the stage for a period of cultural brilliance, technological innovation, and artistic achievement that would leave an enduring legacy. The Sui reign was brief, but it laid the groundwork for the Tang dynasty, which would become one of the greatest golden ages in Chinese history. The Tang dynasty, established in 618 CE, ushered in an era of confidence and openness. Chang'an, the capital, became one of the largest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world, attracting traders, scholars, and diplomats from far beyond China's borders. The empire's borders stretched deep into Central Asia, securing the Silk Road and allowing a vibrant exchange of goods and ideas. Foreign merchants brought with them spices, precious stones, and exotic fashions, while also introducing new music, dances, and even religions such as Buddhism, which took deep root in Chinese culture during this time. The Tang court was a center of poetry, painting, and scholarship. Poets like Li Bai and Du Fu captured the beauty of nature, the struggles of war, and the human spirit with verses that are still celebrated today. Painters developed techniques that emphasized depth, perspective, and the harmony between humans and the natural world. The imperial examination system, refined during this period, opened pathways for talented individuals from across the empire to enter government service based on merit rather than lineage, creating a more educated and capable bureaucracy. However, as with all dynasties, prosperity eventually gave way to decline. Internal corruption, rebellion, and the immense costs of defending vast frontiers weakened the Tang. By the 9th century, the dynasty was fractured and regional warlords gained power, leading to its eventual collapse in 907 CE. China entered another period of political fragmentation known as the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms, but the cultural foundations built by the Tang endured. In 960 CE, the Song dynasty rose to reunite much of China, marking another era of flourishing. While the Song never matched the Tang in territorial expansion, they excelled in governance, arts, and technological innovation. The economy boomed, supported by advances in agriculture such as new strains of rice that allowed multiple harvests per year. Cities expanded, markets bustled with trade, and a money-based economy using the world's first paper currency emerged. The Song period saw groundbreaking scientific achievements. Printing technology advanced with the invention of movable type, spreading knowledge faster than ever before. Gunpowder, first used for fireworks, began to appear in military applications. The magnetic compass revolutionized navigation, enabling maritime trade to grow rapidly. This was also a time when Neo-Confucianism emerged, blending classical Confucian teachings with elements of Buddhism and Taoism, providing a rich philosophical framework that influenced society for centuries. Art and culture reached extraordinary heights during the Song. Landscape painting became a revered art form, with artists capturing the majesty of mountains, rivers, and mist in ways that reflected both technical mastery and spiritual depth. Literature flourished as scholars compiled encyclopedias, histories, and works of philosophy. Yet the cycle of rise and decline persisted. The Song faced constant threats from powerful northern nomadic states. Eventually, the Mongols under Kublai Khan conquered the weakened dynasty, establishing the Yuan dynasty in 1271. While foreign in origin, the Yuan continued many of the cultural traditions they inherited, showing how deeply rooted Chinese civilization had become. The Tang and Song eras, despite their political struggles, represent high points of Chinese culture. Moments when art, science, and philosophy reached heights that influenced not only East Asia, but also the wider world. The dynastic cycle continued, with each rise bringing new achievements and each fall reminding the Chinese people of the fragility of power. Yet through it all, the civilization's cultural core remained strong, adapting, enduring, and inspiring the generations to come. The Mongol conquest of Qin Unification marked one of the most dramatic turns in the nation's long history. In the early 13th century, under the leadership of Genghis Khan, the Mongols swept across Eurasia with unmatched speed and ferocity. By 1271, his grandson Kublai Khan declared the founding of the Yuan dynasty, officially bringing China under Mongol rule. For the first time, the vast Chinese empire was governed by a foreign power, and this change brought both disruption and connection to the wider world. Kublai Khan moved the capital to what is now Beijing, making it a vibrant hub for diplomacy, trade, and culture. The Mongols, with their vast empire stretching from the Pacific to Eastern Europe, opened China to unprecedented contact with distant lands. The Silk Road flourished under their protection, and travelers such as the Venetian Marco Polo described the wonders of the Yuan court to Europe, sparking fascination with the riches of the East. Despite these benefits, Mongol rule was often viewed by the Chinese population as heavy-handed. Many key administrative positions were reserved for foreigners, and social hierarchies placed Mongols above the Han majority. Economic difficulties, natural disasters, and widespread discontent fueled uprisings. By the mid-14th century, a series of rebellions swept across the land, the most famous being the Red Turban Rebellion. In 1368, the Ming dynasty rose to power, driving out the Mongols and restoring native Chinese rule. The Ming sought to reinforce traditional values, rebuild agricultural systems, and revive the glory of earlier dynasties. They embarked on grand construction projects, including the reinforcement of the Great Wall and the building of the Forbidden City, a magnificent imperial palace that still stands today. The Ming era also saw China project its power outward through the voyages of Admiral Zheng He, whose massive treasure fleets sailed across the Indian Ocean, reaching as far as East Africa. These expeditions displayed China's wealth and sophistication to the world, but were eventually halted as the Ming court turned inward, focusing on internal stability rather than overseas expansion. Over time, corruption, economic strain, and peasant unrest weakened the dynasty, opening the door to another foreign conquest. In the mid-17th century, the Manchu people from the northeast seized power, founding the Qin dynasty in 1644. Like the Mongols before them, the Manchus were outsiders, but they adopted many Chinese traditions and presented themselves as guardians of Confucian order. Under early Qing emperors such as Kangxi and Qianlong, China experienced territorial expansion, economic growth, and cultural vibrancy. The empire stretched farther than ever before, encompassing Tibet, Xinjiang, and parts of Central Asia, making it one of the largest in history. The Qing preserved stability for much of their early reign, but by the 19th century, internal and external challenges began to erode their power. Foreign powers, armed with modern weapons and driven by imperial ambition, forced their way into China's markets. The Opium Wars with Britain exposed the Qing's military weakness, leading to humiliating treaties that ceded territory and granted foreign nations control over key ports. Internally, massive uprisings like the Taiping Rebellion, fueled by social discontent and religious fervor, cost millions of lives and further strained the dynasty. Corruption within the court and resistance to modernization left China vulnerable in a rapidly changing world. By the late 19th century, the once mighty Qing was struggling to maintain control, balancing the demands of foreign powers with the unrest of its own people. Foreign invasions and internal challenges tested China's resilience again and again during these centuries. The Mongols and the Manchus each reshaped the empire in their own way, and while foreign rule often brought hardship, it also connected China to broader global currents, exposing it to new technologies, trade networks, and cultural exchanges. Each conquest left its mark, altering the political and social fabric of the nation. But through every upheaval, the essence of Chinese civilization, its language, traditions, and philosophies, endured, ready to guide the country into its next chapter. By the dawn of the 20th century, centuries of imperial rule in China were on the verge of collapse. The Qing dynasty, weakened by foreign domination, internal rebellions, and its own resistance to reform, could no longer hold back the tide of change sweeping across the world. In 1911, a revolution led by reformists and nationalists finally toppled the dynasty, bringing more than 2,000 years of imperial governance to an end. The Republic of China was born, led by figures such as Sun Yat-sen, who envisioned a modern, unified, and democratic nation. But the transition from empire to republic was far from smooth. The new government faced immediate challenges. Warlords carved up the country, foreign powers still controlled important economic zones, and political unity remained elusive. While there were efforts to modernize industry, education, and the military, deep divisions prevented lasting stability. By the late 1920s, the struggle for China's future had evolved into a power contest between the Nationalist Party, or Kuomintang, KMT, and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. This rivalry was interrupted in the 1930s by a threat from outside. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, and by 1937, the Second Sino-Japanese War engulfed much of China. The war was brutal, with millions killed and cities like Nanjing suffering horrific atrocities. Yet in the face of destruction, Chinese resistance, both from nationalist and communist forces, demonstrated resilience and unity against a common enemy. When World War II ended in 1945, the struggle for control resumed almost immediately, plunging China into a full-scale civil war. In 1949, the communist forces under Mao Zedong on the mainland, while the nationalists retreated to Taiwan. This marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would transform China's political system, economy, and position in the world. The early years of the People's Republic were driven by sweeping social and economic campaigns. Land reforms redistributed property from landlords to peasants, and industries were brought under state control. However, ambitious policies such as the Great Leap Forward, aimed at rapidly industrializing the nation, resulted in severe famine and hardship. In the 1960s, the Cultural Revolution sought to purge capitalist and traditional elements from society, leading to years of turmoil, persecution, and the destruction of cultural heritage. Despite these turbulent decades, the foundations for modernization were slowly being laid. Following Mao's death in 1976, New leadership under Deng Xiaoping initiated bold economic reforms. The focus shifted from ideological struggle to pragmatic development, opening China's markets to the world while maintaining strict political control. Special economic zones were established to attract foreign investment. Agriculture was de-collectivized, and industries were encouraged to innovate and compete globally. The results were extraordinary. In just a few decades, China transformed from a largely rural and impoverished nation into one of the world's fastest-growing economies. Cities expanded at breathtaking speed, millions were lifted out of poverty, and China became a central player in global trade. Advances in technology, infrastructure, and manufacturing turned the country into a hub of modern industry and innovation. Yet modernization also brought new challenges. Balancing economic growth with environmental protection, addressing social inequality, and managing relations with other major powers. In the 21st century, China's role on the global stage has continued to grow. It has invested heavily in international infrastructure projects through initiatives like the Belt and Road, expanded its influence in global institutions, and asserted its interests in regional and global affairs. From the fall of the Qing to the bustling megacities of today, China's modern history is a story of struggle, reinvention, and resilience. It is the journey of a civilization that has faced repeated upheaval yet continues to adapt to new realities while holding on to its deep cultural roots. The China of today stands as both a product of its ancient heritage and a force shaping the future. A nation whose story is far from over. From the earliest farmers along the Yellow River to the engineers designing space stations in the 21st century, the history of China is a story of remarkable continuity and reinvention. It is the tale of a civilization that has endured floods and famine, conquest and revolution, yet never lost its identity. Across thousands of years, dynasties have risen and fallen. Foreign armies have come and gone, ideologies have clashed and merged, and through it all, the thread of Chinese culture has remained unbroken. The journey from ancient villages to a global powerhouse was never a straight path. It was shaped by moments of brilliance and times of hardship, by the vision of leaders and the resilience of countless ordinary people whose names history will never record. It was forged in bronze and ink, carried on silk and paper, and rebuilt again and again from the ashes of its own struggles. Today, China stands as one of the world's most influential nations, a bridge between its deep past and the possibilities of the future. Its history is not just a chronicle of one people, but a mirror reflecting humanity's capacity for adaptation, creativity, and survival. To understand China's past is to glimpse the forces that have shaped our shared world. And as its story continues to unfold, one truth remains. Civilizations are not defined only by the years they count, but by the legacies they leave behind.